So dream big is key to making sure that this world is a better place.
If you're interested in personal growth, this is where it happens. If you're interested in a diverse group of people, we all are looking to add value in each other's life. That's what makes this work. Please remember to subscribe, like, and comment below. All right, Deshauna, how are you doing?
I am doing good considering everything that's going on in the world. How are you?
Yeah, there's a lot that's going on, and we just have to stay positive. But yeah, has that, like, what have you been doing to kind of stay the course with that?
I think it's very difficult to stay positive. I've been on my Instagram, and I just have to be honest, it's been very difficult to find positivity through this because I've already lost a friend. So to COVID-19. So, it's one of those things where I can't really sugarcoat how I'm maintaining, but I will say that what I've been doing, which I love, TD Jakes. TD Jakes has uploaded a bunch of virtual sermons of him speaking in an empty church. But his sermons have been specific to COVID-19 and how you can get through the process of believing that even during the worst of days, the heavens are still looking over us. Mm-hmm. So I have been using TD Jakes as a resource. So if anyone needs a level of inspiration, I know it's been helping me keep my sanity. I think it's just Bishop Jakes on his YouTube channel, and it's amazing. I've been using that to keep my head above water.
Yeah, my wife's I hear her in the background, listen to it all the time, but I haven't had a chance to catch on it yet. So how would others describe who Deshauna Barber is?
They probably describe me a little bit crazy, to be honest. I don't know if they would give, oh, she's so kind and so sweet. I don't know if that would be their response. I think they would say that I'm very bold. I'm funny. I'm constantly trying to find ways to be weird and make people laugh. They'll probably describe me as a go-getter because I'm constantly looking for new ways to challenge myself, new ways to advance myself and advance things I understand. And they probably describe me as being compassionate. So let's
take the boldness, right? Have you always been someone that's been bold in the things that you were doing and the way that you were thinking?
Yes,
yeah.
I think I've always been a go against the grain type personality where I'm never walking in the same crowd that I'm never the type that's like attracted to what everyone is doing. I'm the type that likes to break the mold and break through the glass ceiling. I definitely don't believe in conforming. And most of what I do and what I've done throughout my life has been based on what can I do to break the norm or break the stereotypes that's being placed on me, not only as a woman, but as a Black woman. And I think I've done a really good job at showing people that it's okay to be bold and to be different. And it's okay for you to not feel like you need to be placed within a box. And I find that as a woman and as a Black woman, I'm constantly being placed in boxes, and I just don't think that that's fair in terms of allowing someone to be their true self.
Okay, so with that, growing up in a military family, do you feel like that has obviously helped with the mindset that you have today?
I do. Although I would consider the military to be somewhat traditional, both my mother and my father both served in the military, and they met while they were both in the Army, actually. And I think that probably what drove me in terms of being unique is probably my mother more than anything, because she was a mechanic. She was not only a truck driver in the Army, when she got out the Army, she became a mechanic. And she was the only female in her class or her graduating class, or like the 10 graduating classes before that at her university. And she always pushed us to not feel as if we're incapable of doing things merely because we don't see people that look like us within that space. So I think that she kind of drove me growing up to, it's okay to not only work in male-dominated spaces, but also be able to find a level of femininity. I remember there's this picture of her working on a car, and this is back in the 90s, in the early 2000s, when like super long nails are coming back. for some reason. But this was back when, baby boomers were like wearing nails that were like curling and super long. And when she was a mechanic, she would be sitting over a car, and there's a picture of her, and her nails are at least 6 inches long.
Wow.
And she's really working on an engine. So she was just so different. And I think that drove me to feel a little bit more comfortable with being unique, and a little bit more comfortable with not allowing myself to feel as if I have to conform.
Yeah. I feel like long nails never left.
I don't think they're up. So now that you think about it, I feel like long nails have been trending for a very long time. I literally can't have, and I pop my nails off. I usually have on acrylic nails, but my nails usually are about a little bit of a centimeter or something like that past the end of my finger. And anytime it gets any longer than that, I can't even type in my phone or type in my laptop. So when I see girls with like nails this long, I'm like, girl, how are you typing?
How do you do anything?
No way. There's just no way. Anyway, but that's
right. There's a lot of questions we'll have with that one. So growing up as a kid, how were you like as a kid or as a high schooler?
I think that as a kid, and even as a high schooler, I was quite active. I loved climbing trees. I grew up, majority of my childhood was spent partially in North Carolina and then partially in Minnesota. And the trees are beautiful, they're tall, and they're incredibly strong. And I just remember as a kid, myself and my brother, we would always be climbing through or going through the woods trying to find the biggest tree and then see who can get to the top the quickest, which I look back now and it was actually quite dangerous of me to do that. But no accidents ever happened. But I've always considered myself a pretty active person. I was always very tomboyish, which is probably why pageantry ended up intriguing me later on in life, is because I had spent so long up until like my 19, 20-year-old time frame, never wearing a dress and never wearing a skirt or makeup or earrings and things along those lines. So I've always considered myself to be a tomboy for the most part growing up.
So let's talk about that, right? So you mentioned pageantry. How did someone that considers himself a tomboy, how did you even think about pageantry, or how did that even cross your mind that, hey, you know what? Let's go for this Miss USA. Why not?
So I actually have it's a great question, because I actually have a Goalcast video. I love Goalcast. They're great for a space. I'm sure with you having this platform, you're aware of being one of the biggest motivation speaking platforms out there. I have a video that's out right now that talks about how I was discovered in Target. And when I was discovered in Target, I was literally between freshman and sophomore year. And I was folding clothes, and a recruiter for a local state pageant had walked up to me and said, "You look like you could be the next Miss USA." And by then I had never seen a pageant before in my life. The only correlation that I had with pageantry was Miss Congeniality, starring Sandra Bullock. So I remember going home after she mentioned it. I just started Googling pageants and all these things. And I ended up using her as a pageant coach for the next few years. And I think that what I love most about life is that sometimes we don't realize what direction we're going without a slight push, or without fate or some level of destiny happening that exposes us to something we would not have normally seen. And I've always seen myself as someone that believes that our purpose is going to expose itself to us eventually in some way, shape, or form. We just have to be open-minded enough to see that, hey, maybe this is the direction or a career path I can go into. So I think there's one thing that I appreciate about that experience in itself is when she approached me, at first I'm thinking within my mind is, no, that's never going to happen. But I did my research and I realized, this is something that sounds cool. And then eventually, I went on to become the first soldier to win Miss USA and all these things. So I think being open-minded with your dreams is always important for people.
Okay. So get discovered in Target, right? So all you those that are listening in Target, you could always, you never know, you're gonna be discovered, really.
You never know.
From there, you just overnight Miss USA. I mean, it was a very easy path. Is that true?
I wish. So it took me 7 years
7 years.
to win the state pageant. It took me 7 years to win the state pageant. So for those that don't know, when you compete at Miss USA, you have to win your state first. So when you turn on the competition and you're watching it, and these girls are on stage, they all have sashes on, and it's Miss Mississippi or Alabama or New Hampshire. All these women had to compete in a similar style pageant, but at a smaller scale within their state. And to win your state is so difficult, in my opinion. I felt like winning my state was harder than winning Miss USA, because when you compete at the state level, you don't have an entire team behind you. Once you win your state, you have the Miss Alabama USA organization that's helping prep you for Miss USA. But before, you're competing at the state level, you have nobody. So I think competing 7 years straight, and for those that don't know, it's also once a year. So you've got one shot, that one interview, that one swimsuit competition, that one evening gown competition. And every single year I was not even placing. So if they had a top 15, I was not in it.
Wow.
So leading up until the second to the last year of eligibility, because I won at 26, and at the time, you literally have up until you're 26 to compete, and then you age out and you're considered too old. So I won as a 26-year-old. But my 25th year, when I was 25 years old, which was my 6th year competing, because I started at 19. The second to the last year that I competed, I placed for the first time. And I was so thankful, because again, for 6 years, I hadn't even touched the top 15. And again, on the final year, I went on to win. And I think that everyone usually will say, well, Deshauna, what was the shift that final year? The shift that final year is I just stopped caring. I stopped caring. I literally, I think that the first 6 years I had walked into the competition. I think that as people, we have a tendency to do this, where we'll walk into an interview, we'll walk into a space, and we choose to act a way in an expectation that that's what we think the person wants us to act like. So we're assuming, or I assumed at that moment, this is what they're looking for, so this is what I'm going to act like. My 7th year and final year, I said, you know what? Faking it till you're making it is not working. So let me just go in there and be myself.
Yeah.
Let's just see what happens. It's my final year. I'm just going to go out with a bang and just be Deshauna for the first time ever. And I decided to be myself, talk the way that I normally talk, act the way that I normally act. And then I went on to win. And then I did the same thing at Miss USA. I walked in there and I was myself, and that ends up, winning the crown. And it just goes to show that, being yourself is the best version of yourself that you can offer people. And we shouldn't be afraid of holding back who we are for fear of judgment, and I think that that's what the whole process taught me, is that, Deshauna, you're good enough, and you're a queen, whether these people choose you or not, whether the crown goes on your head, you're a queen regardless.
Yeah. And I remember seeing in one year, the competitions, you're walking out and you stick your tongue out, and you're just like, I don't know why I even did that. Right. Which is funny though. But then, like, I think what you're speaking about is just that there's no one better than who you believe you are, and that you're comfortable in your skin, because that's when the genuine person comes out. And then you're not trying to fake it. You're not trying to put out a facade. Like, you're you. Like, this is what you get. And, and in doing that, I think that's great, because obviously when you put out that genuine Deshauna, you won, right? Which is wonderful.
Absolutely. And it's so funny you brought up the tongue thing, because I've literally looked back, I'm like, Deshauna! I told myself, I'm like, I ain't gonna make it past this part. They're gonna cut me at swimsuit, I'm sure. So I was like, stuck my tongue out. I'm just like, I look back, and I remember going backstage, and people were like, why would you do that? I was like, girl, I ain't gonna make it past this spot anyway, so I might as well go out with a bang again and have a good time. And then I end up making it past that part, and I'm like, wow, these people really like me. I don't understand.
Yeah. So take it to a sense of that you are like the 7th year you finally get. How do you get your mind right? The mindset of, I'm going to keep going. Like, okay, I didn't place, I'm going to keep going. At what point do you say like, oh, man, maybe this isn't for me, but like, how do you get that, all those negative doubts and feelings in the head and just keep going?
Well, a mantra that I go by, a quote that I created some years ago is "Do not fear failure, but please be terrified of regret." And I really live by that quote, mostly because I've been through so much in life that has created a large level of regret and resentment for having fear to achieve something and allowing it to weigh me down so much to where I decided not to chase the things that I've wanted. So I think that during those years, there's something about losing for me that wants me to win more and more and more and more and more. So it's like the more that they didn't choose me, the more often that they chose someone else that looks nothing like me, that doesn't understand my experience, that may not represent the culture of DC, because I was Miss DC before I went on to win Miss USA. I would always sit myself back and say, gosh, you know, what would it be like to represent women in this light? And military is one of those situations to where you're either traditional or you're not in the military. So either you think a woman can be feminine or you don't. And I've been the type that I've been trying to push to break the mold of the definition of a military woman and allowing us to embrace our femininity without believing that it depreciates the quality of the uniform. So I think that in the process of going through that each year and the judgment that was cast on me for being able to do both only encouraged me to continue to push the mark in hopes that what I would represent would encourage people to see that you can be anything that you put your mind to and that you can't confine yourself to one space based on the opinion of other people.
I think that's a great mantra to go by, because I think that, I mean, a lot of times I do believe a lot of people they die thinking about what I could have done or what I should have done. And that mantra is, you know, one, you're mixing it with you just being you, right? And then you're also thinking in your mind like, hey, I'm not going to regret it, and I'm just going to put up my best foot forward. So that's wonderful. Um,
Absolutely.
with that being said, do you think your trajectory would have been different had you won the first year?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
If they had chose me the first year, because I do look back and I'm like, okay, Deshauna, you kind of shouldn't have. It was right that you didn't win some of these years because you look a mess. But I definitely think that if the crown had gone on me any earlier, I would not have won Miss USA. I definitely don't think I would have won Miss USA. I probably would have been unplaced because, you know, you go to Miss USA, you may not place at all. So I think I probably would have been unplaced because I think sometimes we take issue with the process, but we don't realize that the process is literally growing us into what we need to be to actually be the version of ourselves that's necessary to handle the dream that we want. So each year I was becoming a better version of Deshauna, and I was becoming more equipped to be Miss USA with each year. Each year I learned more. Each year I became a more well-spoken. Each year I gained more confidence. Each year I think I started to evolve because every year I was learning something, whether it's intentional or unintentional. So by the time I got to the 7th year, little did I know that I was Miss USA right when the Miss DC crown went on me. I was prepared and I was ready. And once I went off to Miss USA, all the puzzle pieces had placed themselves. And I think that we can't be afraid of the process. Sometimes the process of loss is only preparing us for that win. And we just have to be patient because you may not be where you need to be in life to be able to handle the dream that you want. So you have to allow yourself to get there, and your life to get there, your personality, your finances, your financial situation, your family situation. Sometimes your dream is going to happen. It just has to come at a time where you are in the exact spot that you need to be able to handle it. So the process in itself is important.
Yeah. And I think you had mentioned about just being able to, overcoming adversity and being able to grow and, each time getting better throughout the process.
Mhm.
So with that being said, how has some of your past adversities, and, feel free to, share them, prepared you for who you are today?
Hmm. So I've had a few things that have happened over life. I know that you and I, even before we got on the call, we talked about my experience with child sexual abuse, and it's one of those things to where pain in itself, it pushes you to understand that the world is not always the most peaceful place that we hope it to be. And I think that when you're experiencing something that's so detrimental to your self-esteem, it challenges you to, what can I do to not be this person? Or what can I do to never hurt someone the way that I've been hurt?
Mhm.
Sometimes I think that pain prevents pain because it pushes us to want to be better people. And it's a terrible experience, but I think that I've become such a lover of the younger generation and protecting them based on my experience with predators, that I have gone through and I've created a life that's not only based in encouraging people to chase their dreams, but also encouraging people to be cognizant of the generation that we are growing into adults in the future of this world. So it sounds bad, and some people may not be able to understand it, but sometimes we have to allow our past experiences and our past pains to evolve us into a better version of ourselves because we have been at our lowest low. And what can we do to use this experience to make sure that no one has to experience what you experienced in the past? So I've done a lot of events, and I've collaborated with a lot of organizations that are dedicated to protecting children.
Mm.
And I'm hoping that my experience allows some of these kids that have been silenced, allows them to have a voice so that in the future we can prevent less children from being able to go through these things. And I think that sometimes you need a push. Sometimes you need to understand it to fix it. And that's the bad part about pain. That's the bad part about experiencing things that are so impactful to us, is because you never understand it till you've gone through it. So how can I see the signs in a kid if I don't know what it feels like to have been attacked or abused by a predator? So it has a few silver linings in it, but I definitely think that it's just made me a better person. And it's one of those things that's just allowed me to see people for who they are and to appreciate the good people that come into my life,
Yeah.
because I know that there's evil out there. So it can be hard,
Yeah.
but we have to find a silver lining in our pain. That makes
Yes.
sense.
So yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. To what you're saying though. So I'm a parent of two little ones, right? And I think you
Oh.
kind of mentioned something
Hmm.
about being able to empower the youth to be bold and
Yeah.
confident. So as a parent, what can you tell me to make sure that I am providing my kids with the boldness and the confidence to be vocal? Because you seem like someone that's pretty vocal, right?
Oh yeah. My boyfriend will tell you. She talks. She'll tell you how can we empower our kids to be bold and confident? I don't know about you coming from a Nigerian family, but I know that as a community of people, adults in general, I think we have a tendency to dismiss our kids and how they feel and what they say,
Mm.
because we're adults and we just assume that we know everything. And I think that sometimes that's where we go wrong, because kids are quite intuitive and they're 10 times more intelligent than we think they are.
Big time, yeah.
And they understand life and the good and the bad more than we know sometimes. So I think that sometimes we have to trust our kids a little bit more in the next generation to be able to make decisions for themselves. One thing I do notice, and what I always project to parents when they're trying to catch the signs, or they're trying to, my kid is being bullied, or my kid experiencing this, my kid is experiencing that, they don't give their kids a safe space to be able to say how they feel. You're used to shutting your kids down. You're used to telling them you're just a kid, you know, you don't pay any bills here. You don't know anything about what's going on. I know my mom was quick to be like, you don't pay any bills here. You know, and as a parent, and even as an adult, I'm not a mom, but I'm an aunt. And I still find myself, you know, telling my nephews, would you stop? You don't know what you're talking about. You're only 6. But a lot of these kids do have, I think their innocence allows them to be a little bit more open-minded to their intuition, because they haven't had anything to distort their point of views. So if I had any recommendations to you as a father, I would say to trust your children and trust what they're saying. And even when they're wrong, explaining to them in a way where they don't feel demeaned or they don't feel bashed. They feel like, you know what, that makes sense. Sometimes we're so parental with kids nowadays to where they always feel like children. And sometimes in the space of feeling like a child, you no longer feel like an individual that's capable of making your own decisions. So we have to allow our kids, whether right or wrong, to feel like they have a safe space to talk to their parents. And I think that that lack of a safe space is the product of a lot of the issues that happen later on down the line, because the kid said, I was too scared to tell my mom, I was too scared to tell my dad. And that in itself has its own ripple effect to bad things that end up happening later on down the line. Yeah. So I've always told myself, even though I come from a household where you get shut down real quick, if a parent doesn't like what you're saying, you're getting shut down. I've been telling myself that I love my parents, but when I have kids, I want to do a better job than they did. My dad's gonna kill me when he hears this, but it's the truth. They'll be okay. I still turned out fine. But I'm going to do a better job at policing myself to make sure that I'm allowing my kids a safe space to be able to communicate. And that's kind of just my goal. And I think that as a father, do you have any daughters?
Yeah, I have a daughter and a son. So one of each.
Okay. You kind of got it that back and forth. And I think that sons are quicker to come to their fathers, but daughters are a little bit more, well, I don't know if dad's going to understand because it's coming from a female point of view. But it's as a father, even more with your daughter, allowing her safe space, because I think your son is already going to have that natural connection as a boy-to-boy, man-to-man thing. But women, we're a little bit more timid when it comes to communicating with men because we don't think y'all really understand us at all. And even more as younger kids, we're struggling to be able to communicate with dad. So I think that will probably be the best thing that I can offer as to parents out there listening and just outside looking in. From what I can see, safe space is very important, and that empowers people to be more voiceful when it comes to communicating anything, because they're used to being at home, being able to say how they feel. Hopefully in a very eloquent way, but they're used to having a space to do that. So I think allowing our kids to do that is very important.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And even what you're saying, right? So it's like particularly for the youth, but then as you just think about it, like, it matriculates to adulthood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, friends, whatever it may be, is people need that safe place to be vulnerable, to be open, to be able to tell people how they're feeling and be able to receive back some type of safety, right? So in saying that though, right, I mean, as you talk about overcoming adversity and being able to use that as stepping stones, one thing that I've noticed from you is that you are, especially as you're speaking, and you do a lot of motivational speaking, you do show that vulnerable side to be able to connect with people. How hard was that to be open and vulnerable?
It can be very difficult. And I think that that's one thing that preachers and, I hope this thing's dying. Sorry, I'm gonna have to start that over. It clicked out for a
No
second.
problem.
Did it cut for you?
Yeah, it did, but no worries.
I'm on 10%. Darn it, why didn't I charge my iPad? Anyway,
You should be
okay.
good.
Sorry about that. But I think that when it comes to vulnerability, I've never really struggled with speaking my mind, but I have struggled with telling people about the
Yeah.
things that have hurt me in the past, because it's hard to be able to come out and say that this is what happened to me as a kid. It's hard to be able to come out and say I'm hurting from this or hurting from that. But I think that once you break the boundary of vulnerability, there's really no looking back, and
That's a good
everything
point.
else from there, it becomes very easy. Literally, when someone says, and I've had my own fair share of issues going on in the past where I have stalkers or people that have it out for me for
Wow.
whatever reason. And the first thing they go to is, you know what, I'm going to expose you. I'm like, listen,
It's done.
you can't expose someone that has already put everything out there, love. You go ahead and enjoy yourself. But what it means is that you literally think that you're releasing power by telling people what you're going through or by being vulnerable, but really you're retaining power because you have become the writer of your own story. You have become the person that's able to illustrate the things that you've gone through. And quite frankly, what we don't realize is that people respect vulnerability more than they respect someone that is so introverted with their experiences that you don't understand who that person is. I've looked over the past where I have friends and they're not required to be vulnerable. It's like, I kind of don't know you because I don't know what your experiences are. I don't know what even makes you human or has made you you. So I think there's a level of trustworthiness that comes from speakers that are willing to say, this is everything that I've been through in my life, and this is how I got through it. I love being able to turn on the television and look at like the Eric Thomases and the T.D. Jakes of the world that have literally told you everything. Eric Thomas is quick to say that I ate out of trash cans. Any man that's literally able to allow himself to be that vulnerable, to talk about being in such a state of poverty, and now look at him now,
Yeah.
that is inspirational to a lot of people. So I think that vulnerability is something that we need to be a little bit more comfortable with allowing ourselves to be open, because it's easier and it doesn't weigh as heavy because you're not so focused on what can I do to protect information. You're focused on what can I do to use this information to inspire people to change or to chase their dreams. What can I do to use this information to help others? And in itself, vulnerability is actually strength.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of very, very good points. So if someone that wants to be more open, what is the Deshauna advice? This is how you be more open. Is it just start with one thing, or what should they do?
I would say to be more open, you have to first define what you've closed off. A lot of the times we have skeletons in our closet that we're so used to them being locked in there that we forget that they're there. So I think that a lot of the times vulnerability requires us to understand, what is it that you're hiding? What is it that you're afraid to talk about? What is it that you don't want people to know? So I think the first step to vulnerability is, what are you scared of? And once you determine that, it's easier to be able to push yourself to be open about experiences, because you understand what experiences you don't want people to know about.
So people that are listening to this, we want to inspire and motivate them. We want them to dream big. I mean, you placed top 9 out of how many? 86 countries for Miss
86
Universe.
countries,
86
yes, thank you.
countries, which is the greatest accomplishment. So congrats and kudos. So that's to me at least, that seems like a very big dream, right? How do you, or how does one really have that mindset of like, this dream's big, I'm gonna go after it? How do they do that?
Dreams can be intimidating. And I just did a thing with Google and Shine Hard, an organization, you might know of them. They're based in DC, and they do these Google conversations. And I told Johnny Bailey, who runs it, he says, how do you get over being intimidated by dreams? And I said that a lot of times we don't do things because we're afraid. And the best way to combat the intimidation that comes from the things that we're afraid of is to do it afraid. A lot of the times when we're dreaming of something big and we want to do something big, we're waiting for the fear to go away.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
And what we realize is that it's never going away. It's never going away. When your dreams are so outrageously huge, you're never going to be fearless in this process. You just aren't. You're always going to be scared. So you have to do it scared. You have to do it when you're afraid. You have to do it when you have doubt. And you just have to allow yourself to push through that fear and recognize that it's never going to go away. But does that mean that it should be the prevention wall placed in front of me? It shouldn't be, merely because we're afraid. Fear, when it comes to the things that we desire, when they're of a certain magnitude, it's never going away. I was never, ever confident when I was on the Miss Universe stage. I was scared the whole time. The whole time. Even at the Miss USA competition, I was scared. For 7 years straight when I was competing for my state pageant and eventually won DC, I was scared. There has never been a time in my life where I've been unafraid. I can't think of a time. I can't literally think of a time where I've been unafraid of something. I'm always scared of something. And I think we're scared of failing. We're scared of not impressing other people, or we're afraid of putting so much into something and it doesn't work out. That's what we're afraid of, and that's natural. We're human beings, that's normal. But we have to allow ourselves to still be able to function in fear. And it's difficult to do that. But once you master functioning in fear, nothing is ever going to be able to hold you back from the things that you want. You're always going to be able to push through the level of fear that you have in your mind. And you're always going to be able to accomplish the things that you want, because you don't allow your emotions to dictate the things that you dream of doing and the actions that you plan on taking behind it.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. And the crazy thing too is that, these fears that we have, people that we're out there with are sharing the same fears, but some reason in our mind, we're just like, is it just me or but at the end of the day, action drives out that fear. So we're going to go into a lightning round, and in this lightning round are just questions that I collect from our listeners, just in general, about people that we're interviewing. So the first, and then the responses should be about 45 seconds, right?
Okay.
Max. So what does the phrase "all things are possible" mean to you?
All things are possible to me means probably exactly that we're capable of anything. We have the ability within ourselves to accomplish anything. All things are possible means that if you put your mind to something, you can make it happen.
All right. What inspires you?
A few things. I would definitely say my mom inspires me. She passed away 3 months into winning Miss USA.
Condolences.
I slipped into a really, really, really deep depression during my time as Miss USA. And I think that what inspired me to pull out of the darkness is realizing that she wants me to be happy. And by being sad and upset and hurt 100% of the time, that's not allowing her rest peacefully. And I need her to be at peace. And I can't allow her to be at peace if I'm not at peace with what happened. So I definitely think what inspires me is knowing that me living my dreams is allowing her to rest peacefully.
All right. It makes you rest in perfect peace.
Thank you.
What makes you unique?
I think what makes me unique is my ability to connect with people. I've always found, and I think that as a speaker, you have to have that as a talent. You have to be able to connect with people through words, through your energy. And I think that I've always been able to do that in my own short way, shape, or form. So I think that that's probably what makes me unique. I don't think there's a person on the planet that I can't some way find a connection with. Ooh.
All right.
Just hit 5%. I might have to get my 2 seconds.
No problem.
Cuts out. But I just plugged it back up, so we should be good.
It's like, surprise.
Yeah, literally. literally. So worst.
All right. All right. So what's Deshauna Barber up to today?
Okay, Deshauna Barber's up to a lot. So I am the CEO of Service Women's Action Network. It is a nonprofit that provides professional and personal resources for service women and women veterans. It's a position I just started in January. So it's only been about 3.5, 4 months-ish. And I've been loving it. It's again an example of jumping into something completely afraid. I've never been CEO of a large scale organization before. So I have staff and interns that work for me, and it was the scariest thing. And when they called me after all the people that they interviewed, I couldn't believe they offered it to me, but I took it. I said, I'm going to do it afraid, and I'm figuring it out. It's working. So I'm thankful, but that's been my primary. I'm still in the military. I am a reserve officer at Howard University's Bison Battalion. So I work as a cadre member for the ROTC cadets there. So that's what I do as the second job. And the third job is full-time motivational speaker. I'm under a Harry Walker agency that's based in New York. And before the pandemic, they were flying me all over the world to speak. So I still do that full-time. So I'm balancing a lot of stuff right now. But
Yes.
that's
So like, how do you balance all those different things? I know a lot of people where, they have the 9 to 5 and it's just like, I just don't have the time. I just don't have the time. But people are doing it, right? And how do you do it?
I think that it's important to have a Google Calendar. Google Calendar just saves my life. It connects everything. And it's important to be as organized as possible. I also have an assistant that at bare minimum runs my emails and does all my scheduling. So that does take a little bit of the heftiness off of it. But I think I maintain it through lots of prayer, a little bit of margaritas every now and then, and a lot of support. So I maintain it because it's something that you love. And when you love something a lot, you're willing to have sleepless nights over it. So.
And I know you're not talking about like virgin margaritas either, right?
Yeah, never virgin margaritas. Lots of tequila.
All right. So Deshauna, so our listeners are looking for some inspiration and motivation. What can you leave them with to be inspired?
I always leave organizations or speeches or podcasts by saying, do not fear failure, but please be terrified of regret. It's a mantra that drives me, and I do think that it's a mantra that will help your followers.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Deshauna. So wishing you great success. Keep pushing forward. Keep inspiring and motivating others, and keep doing the great work that you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Please remember to subscribe, like, and comment below.